Can an athlete be a successful entrepreneur? This is Mission Ignite, no bullshit business. Hi, welcome to Mission Ignite. Here, we uncover the no bullshit stories from successful individuals and ignite your dream to success. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Lionel Lee. He's a dynamic entrepreneur and a leader who wears many hats. As a director of Westpoint Transit, he is also a co-owner of an advertising powerhouse, Playmakers. Lionel has carved out his path as a second-gen business leader, but he started off his journey in the pool. As you have guessed it, Lionel is also a former national swimmer for Singapore, winning gold at the 23rd SEA Games. So, from the discipline of a top athlete to the challenges of steering a family business, here we will dive into Lionel's incredible journey from the pressure of running a family business to the struggles and triumphs that shaped him. And finally, he's going to share with us some of the words he has for the next generation of dreamers and doers. With that, Lionel Lee!
Thank you. Hi, Tillerson.
Thank you very much for coming here. Do you mind sharing your background with our audience out there, right? And what you're doing now?
Okay. Hi. My name is Lionel. I am actually a second-gen director, business lead at Westpoint Transit, which is a bus provider company in Singapore. So what Westpoint does, in a nutshell, we provide bus transportation for companies where the public transport network in Singapore may not be able to reach or provide as much volume in terms of the transportation frequency as the company's needs are. So for us, this is where private bus companies like Westpoint comes in to help to basically make sure that the staff get from the public transport, for example, MRT stations, pickup bays, bus stops, to the doorstep of their offices.
Right. So there are many such bus services out there, yes?
Yes.
Right. So what makes Westpoint so unique?
Well, the honest answer is that the difference is actually very granular. Westpoint is in a very traditional business. It's been around for about 4 decades long.
4 decades long?
Yeah, the
Wow.
company itself. Yeah. So obviously I didn't start it. My parents started. So that's why, I'm second generation. But the industry itself has been around for much longer. If you remember or you recall in primary school, you probably read about the bus riots in Singapore back then.
Yes.
That's how long private bus transportation as an industry has been in existence in Singapore. So for us, what makes us different is that, number one, we actually focus a lot on making sure that each passenger not only gets to the destination day to day in a safe and comfortable manner, but we try to take away the pain points of everybody that's involved in the process. And by that, what I mean is the passenger himself or herself is obviously the most important. So his comfort, her comfort, safety, and also how he or she may have needs in the transportation side that we can actually provide for. We also look at the transportation coordinators of each company. What are their pain points when it comes to making sure that the buses and the transportation that they pay for arrive and leave on time on a day-to-day basis as well. So you talk about trackability, accountability. This is where Westpoint actually is able to provide a lot of data that makes sure that any possible complaint or I would say inconvenience that their staff members may experience is minimized or even removed.
Right.
Yeah. And then of course you have the individuals in the management side of things on both my company as well as the customer side, what their pain points are, right?
I see.
Whether it is in terms of are the pickup points convenient enough for their passengers or for their staff members. These are things that Westpoint actually comes in to help plan and consult with our customers, decision makers as well.
Oh, so you don't just do normal services, you actually ensure that the customers has the best outcome from it.
Yeah.
So that's the extra mile that you guys go.
Yes.
Oh,
I
wow.
would say that it is the extra mile when you think of it from that standpoint, meaning that the response that you just gave, this is very common amongst most people, because this industry is so, in a way, it's so traditional that most people look at it and they're like, yeah, bus law, right? But when it comes to what we can do better, we feel that there's a lot that can be done and can be achieved. And this is, in a way, the DNA of the company that my parents actually set or baked into it. Meaning that we don't just take service as what customers expect, but how can we go a bit further? Right? Because that is where then you get not only the appreciation, but also hopefully the loyalty of the customers as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. So that said, now I'm very curious because you mentioned just now, you're a second generation, right, in the family business.
Yeah.
How was your journey like, right, growing up with, Westpoint?
Wow, that's I like that question. I would say that growing up, it was a very different setup as to what it is now in terms of like what the company physically looks like. I remember when I was young, we stayed in a shop house in the west of Singapore, and our house was on the second floor.
Right.
And then the office would be on the first floor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, back then it was quite common.
Yes.
And then, our neighbor was like a medical hall. The other side is like a garment shop. That probably shows how old I
Yeah, he's not that old. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen.
And so myself and my sister and I, we grew up constantly being exposed to, what my parents and their then small team of staff members would be tackling on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
And also you can imagine the proximity of the office to home, right? Means that at any point in time, family activities can be disrupted. So, your dinner time, or maybe we're just having a family playtime together as young kids. That can be cut short very quickly because maybe my dad has to go and attend to a matter with the drivers, or customers call, there's a complaint. Back then, they did more school transportation. So with school bus transportation, as you can imagine, there are a lot more concerns to be addressed. Yeah, like a child goes, not missing, but like, the mom panics because, the bus is late and she thought that the bus already left and the child has gone.
And it's a period where there's no mobile phones.
Yes, correct. Yeah, no internet, no mobile phones. So in a way, accountability is only by phone. And that time, phone was landline, not even handphone. Yeah. So growing up, that was really my experience. And I think for me, because I grew up in that environment, I never thought that it was peculiar. Like to me, that's normal. Like, oh, you work in the day downstairs and then mom and dad will come up the stairs.
Yes.
And then we'll have dinner, after school.
It's a norm for you then.
Yeah. And also because of the fact that the business was downstairs, in the early days, there were not that many buses. So all the buses were either parked near the area.
Near the shop house area? Wow.
Near the area. Or much later when the buses got bigger, then they would park at the workshop. That was also not that far from our house. So there was a lot of inevitable interactions with either the buses or the bus drivers or the bus attendants or my mom's staff. So my parents' staff. And so for me, I never felt like it was something that I was unfamiliar with. Yeah. So that was what it was like growing up. Like it was like normal, looking at buses, looking at my dad open up the bonnet of the bus, looking at the moving parts. Those were very normal for us. Yeah.
So with that, right, share with us, how do you actually even enter the business?
Yeah, as much as I would like to make it very romantic, right? The truth of the matter is that I was guilt-tripped into coming back into the business. Yeah. I came from a different line. I was in the corporate world for a number of years before mom and dad finally managed to convince me.
All right.
Some say convince, some say guilt-trip. Convince me to come back to the business because number one, they were getting older.
Yep.
They didn't have the energy to continue. Number two, they said, your sister and yourself, you both have graduated already. We don't have to work so hard anymore. And number 3, they said, either you come back or we will sell or close down the business. So I think for me at the time, it was part duty and also part, like I said, like the sense of like guilt, right? That I felt that, look, I need to at least come back and give it a fair go, right? After all, this was the business that, in a way, not only allowed my sister and I to have the education we could have had, we had, but also the experiences in life that we had. Right? Everything that we could afford was because of this business.
Yes.
So the least I can do is to come back and see how far I can take this. And if I can do even better than that and expand it and, bring it to the next level, that would be a dream.
Right.
So that's how I ended up back here.
So prior to that, right, would you have ever thought of you returning without that convincing you back to the business?
I would say that it had always been in the back of my mind because, I grew up with my parents running the business. And when it came to succession, there were times when they had experimented with, either having a third party or external individual or business coming in to take over or selling the business. But it never really came to fruition. I think it was partly because of sentimental reasons, because they couldn't find a common way to part with the business,
right?
Or to work with an individual or that other company. That it became clearer and clearer at some point,
right?
That either I have to come in, because my sister, she's not based in Singapore, so that is a zero possibility there. So it was either myself coming back or the business closing down. Yeah. So in a way, yes, it was always at the back of my mind. I think as with most things in life, if you can procrastinate, you just mentally
try to avoid it, push back as much as you could.
Correct. And don't think that it's a reality until you have no choice. Yeah.
So I also understand, right, that you're also a co-owner, right, of a advertising powerhouse called Playmakers, right? How did that come about?
You're very kind. I like that you call it a powerhouse. We're getting there. Shout out to my co-founder Denise. How did I get it? I when I graduated in 2011, after my university degree, I came back and I wanted to be a journalist. Right. But obviously I didn't have the chops. I couldn't cut it. I got rejected multiple times. And so I ended up applying for the next best thing that I could be that was adjacent to being a journalist, which was copywriting.
Right.
And even then I got rejected.
Oh, really?
They said that my sentences were too long. Basically, I was a bit too lost-all, right?
Okay.
And at that same interview, I think one of the business directors of that agency actually felt like I had the I would say the character to possibly go into account management.
Right.
Yeah. So, in advertising, there are basically 3 main facets, right? You have your strat, you have the creative side, which most people think is
that's
what
pretty much it. Yeah. But you're the account manager to bring the revenue into the business.
Correct. Yeah. So those are, you're right. And also to basically manage the relationship with the clients.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was what I did as my first job as an intern. And then I did that for about 7 years. And towards the end of my corporate career, so to speak, I decided that I can go on like this, but it won't really change in the macro side of things. I could change accounts, I could change the environment, the people that I work with, but in a way, the processes and the approach would still stay roughly the same. And so I thought to myself that if I don't do something now, at this point and then, I don't think I would have the opportunity to do it again. Right. And so I made a decision to take a step at being an entrepreneur or being a business founder, and decided to open my own agency. So in a way, I took the closest step I could just to step outside of the box, which is okay. I'll replicate the
best available, right?
which is to start the business, which is what I'm doing now, and just replicate it, but just do it myself.
Right.
I was very fortunate to have been able to convince my then colleague, now business partner, to come on board with me, because she was and she continues to be in the strategic side of things, and she also has a flair for the creative concept and execution side of things as well. So in a way, she covered my points of weakness when it came to at least having an agency that can deliver to our clients. So we took that step back in 2017. And I always tell people this, it was the most foolhardy way of approaching a business, because we left the corporate world with no clients, no contacts, no plans at all. Just thinking that
we'll meet it.
Yeah, we'll build it and people will come. And I always remember, like, we spent the first 6 months sitting in a cafe every day, Monday to Friday, just looking at each other and our laptop and thinking like, what are we gonna do? Who can we call to be our clients?
Right.
So we really started from scratch with no idea, no plan at all. And from there, we slowly built one client, two clients. Didn't take salary for a short while, before we finally were able to at least master a roster of clients that could then see what we were able to deliver.
I see.
Yeah, the blessing that we had was that we had the discipline that was instilled in us in the corporate side, the big agency side of things. Being able to carry out conversations with clients, and then also taking those skill sets and bringing them to the small and medium enterprises in Singapore, right? And then what we did was we would talk to clients and say, what are your pain points?
So these are cold calls, just walk in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were also very lucky that there were a number of early clients that knew of us, from our previous engagement.
Right.
And decided that, okay, you know what? I heard you have an agency now. My business needs some help. Can you help me? Right? So in a way, maybe it's pity. Maybe they
it's
really
good reputation that you guys have really formed, I'm sure.
Thank you. I think so. I do think so. But I also think that it was a mixture of, like I said, like luck. Definitely if you're religious, God's will. And also us just hustling.
Right.
Being a bit more thick-skinned.
Yeah.
Knocking on doors, sending out cold call emails, which I really honestly don't recommend from a business approach standpoint. Yeah, because I think that in today's world, it's very different.
Yeah.
Unless you're in a very niche kind of business, cold calling isn't what it used to be.
Right.
Yeah. So like I said, back then, that's how we did it. And we slowly built up from there.
I see.
Yeah.
So this was before you went into Westpoint, or was it almost the same time?
At that point in time, I wasn't involved in Westpoint, apart from helping my mom out with marketing, marketing, in a sense, like, mom would say, oh, since you're in advertising now, can you help me do some pamphlets? Hey, there's this thing called Facebook, can you actually do some Facebook posts for us? My boss needs some decal, can you go and print for me? So it was very piecemeal, right. It's like we just come, I would just come in whenever they needed help, and just dip in and out whenever they felt that I would be able to provide some assistance.
For the fun of it, free, right?
Yeah.
So there you go, right? Doesn't mean that your mom helps you earn something. No, it's free, right? Because it's your parents after all, right? They raise you.
Yeah. But of course, if my parents are sitting here, they will say, it's not free, how many years of paying for this, paying for that.
It's true. I mean, they build your career in a way.
Yeah.
So that was before Westpoint. So
yes.
Now my question here is, I'm curious, how did your experience from the corporate side, the advertising side, help you advance with Westpoint?
Okay, so I think there were three things, right? Firstly, when I entered the corporate world, as I told you just now, I wanted to be a journalist. And in my degree in university, I actually studied law. So in my mom's and dad's head, I was going to be a lawyer.
Right.
obviously, I'm the family disappointment.
Family disappointment.
So
but you
when
have a family company after all.
when I came back and I told them I wanted to be a journalist,
Right.
After they recovered from the shock, or I don't know if they actually did ever recover from it, they realized that, oh no, he's not even going to make it as a journalist, right? So from that experience, right, I actually learned a very confronting lesson, or maybe a very real lesson about grit, right? Being rejected in the face many times over, and having to alter your plans or to adjust your plans as you go along is a life skill, right? Because if you get too hung up over, oh, this is what I want, but then you can't figure a way around it or over it, then you're always going to be stuck there.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, the first thing that I carried over to the business, because when I took over the family business, Westpoint, the obstacles that I faced were quite a few of them.
Right.
It was a very conventional business. There were what you would call the old guard. And understandably to them, I was the boss's son that is parachuted into this position. So yes, they would not speak up against me, but when it comes to actual decision making, or me making decisions that might affect them in the way they conducted, their jobs, they would definitely push back.
Yeah.
You see, so I had to actually figure out how to lead a team that I didn't have the trust and perhaps respect of, and figure out how to actually get them to be working with me.
Okay.
Right? And this is just internally, because externally, the business at that point in time was also facing a lot of different challenges.
I see.
Yeah. The business had been stagnant for a while. And we had to figure out how then to actually, overcome these obstacles, right? So grit was definitely the first thing that I learned. Most advertising professionals will tell you also that, the early years of advertising, it's very painful. It's long hours. Sometimes the way that clients or other stakeholders speak to you, not necessarily going to be the most pleasant.
Yeah.
And you have to either learn to suck it up, or you have to quit.
Yes.
Right. And I think that was the second thing that I had to quickly figure out as well. Right. With the family business. Because when I took over, apart from the internal struggles that I had, the external environment or backdrop was that a lot of customers had the impression that this company is just running until one day it will, run aground.
Yeah.
Right. So customers treat you the way that you project the company to be.
Yeah.
In a sense, right? And so if there's no energy coming from it, the customers will take you as it is. So when it comes to things like cost cutting, when it comes to things like pushing for, more transportation volume, for example, they will treat Westpoint as then, hopefully, as the company that they can actually press for cost effective options.
Yes.
Right, because then they'll say, your buses are old, or but then
why should we be paying for that price?
Yeah, correct. What's the premium that you are delivering?
Yeah,
I got this quote from this other company. They got newer buses, for example. Yeah. So for me, having to actually sit down and understand what our clients' pain points were, which is what I was telling you just now earlier, that was important as well, and that was something that I learned very quickly in advertising. Clients can speak to you in a very curt way, perhaps in a way that you may not like, and you can take it personally and get offended and and just I hate this person, and then you walk away. Or you can look at it and say, look, that person is trying to get his or her job done. Yeah, it's not personal, right? Or rarely is personal, right? And if you can see from that standpoint, it helps to take away a lot of that personal sentiment in your decision making, right? And you focus on what is the task at hand. If the client says your bus is old, and you don't look at it from a personal standpoint, you don't get hurt by it, then the logical response is, I need to figure out how to fix this issue. Yeah. right? Rather than say, oh, why you say my bus is old? Like this company's bus is so old. Then you get...
Try to keep the emotional aside per se.
Correct. The reasoning needs to be more rational.
Right.
Yeah. So when I'm able to do that, then I focus more on what's the client's pain point. When they say your bus is old, it's actually a result of something else.
Right.
My passengers, my staff members are complaining to me that your bus is old, and I am at a pressure point because they are saying, hey, they see nicer bus outside. Why cannot, use that
Use those
company?
nicer bus and then probably cheaper or slightly same price, maybe.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a way, of course it is a bit of a mindset shift, but the clients are also trying to tell you something. You need to fix this problem.
Yeah.
If you don't fix this problem, then we need to go with someone else. Right. So in that sense, that was the learning that I got from advertising. Right. And I put my sentiments aside, understand what the pain point is. Let's talk about the pain points. Yeah. So that was the second thing. And I think the third thing was in terms of being able to see where the opportunities lie. Advertising actually taught me that nothing is cast in stone. Right. Aside from what is in the 10 Commandments.
But isn't it very tiring since it's always like a moving goalpost per se?
Yes, I would say that it definitely takes a lot of energy and a lot of your focus, and you definitely need to constantly think of solutions.
Right.
But for me personally, this is something that drives me. I've always said this about the industry that I'm in now. It's a very established industry.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it continues to be a very traditional industry. And I can choose to follow in the ways of what has been done over 4 decades, 5 decades, 6 decades. Or I can see it as an opportunity for changing something.
Right.
And if I can do so within my means, then I feel like at least I have achieved something.
I see.
And if I fail, at least I learned something.
That's true.
Right? Because I think that in today's world, you cannot just repeat what, the previous generation did and hope to get away with it. That's really not what business allows you to do nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
So the things that I'm very curious because you did mention, greed multiple of times, right? And as our viewers, right, as I've just introduced Lionel just now, right? When during his younger days, right, back in the early 2000s, right, he was a national swimmer. So I'm going to bring you back to that period now. I'm very curious because I'm sure during that period, sports play a very huge part in your life. My question to you is, do you think that actually sports shape you, right, to have such a mindset of greed, right, whether it's in the advertising firm or even in Westpoint?
Oh, that's really a very good question to listen. In fact, I just had a conversation with an ex-teammate on this topic as well. I definitely think sports, along with other forms of perhaps discipline-based activities, even like uniform groups, even musical instruments, anything that requires some sort of discipline and regime or routine or ritual, right? It builds life skills that you cannot otherwise get. Grit being one of them, right? I used to swim, and in swimming, it's you against the clock, right? And there's no such thing as judging.
Yeah.
Right? So you either win or you lose. I mean, in the sense that you're the first, second, or third, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that leaves me with little space for hiding between the grass, right? When it comes to training, when it comes to performing, when it comes to preparation. And I've always carried that approach on to not just business, but even, to other aspects of my life as well. And I think that in a way, while it is very old school, it is something that we cannot deny works, right? You need to have that foundation of certain traits or characteristics, right? Before you can actually look at how to be clever about it, right? I think too often we try and cut corners.
Yeah.
As humans, I think we're always looking for the path of least resistance.
The easiest way out. That's what we all say.
Correct. Towards, what we deem as success. But when that doesn't work out, I think that you still need to have something to carry you through it.
Right.
because if not, then the flip side is you just give up.
Yeah.
Right. And I think going back to my sporting days, there were many times when I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve, or there were lows in the career, in my career. And how I had to learn to pick myself up was very thankfully through the help and support of my coaches, my parents, of course, and of course the teammates that were around me. Right. And so you really learn to absorb the lessons and the energy from them, and apply that, onto how you approach your own career, whether it's in sports, like I said, in corporate, or even in your own business.
Yeah. So in case, our viewers out there, right, have no idea, right, who his teammates are, right? These are the likes of Jocelyn Yeo, where Hua Tingwen just started off, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marcus Che, Mark Che, as well as Gary Tan. So that era, right? You can go and do a quick search, right? What you will see is you'll see Lionel, right, in an awesome golden hair. That was the era, right?
Yeah. You guys can do like a superimposed version.
Yeah. So with that, I think with hearing from what you say from swimming and all, as well as your businesses, right? I want to touch on some of the struggles and roadblocks that you have in your whole career, right? Or rather your whole journey, right? Could you share with us some of the bigger challenges you faced, right, when you took off Westpoint Transit? Because you did mention that staff was one of them.
Yeah.
Right? And like what you mentioned, you were just parachuted straight into it, right? Just because it's your parents, it's your family business, it's your parents' business, right? Yeah. How do you gradually convince them that you could lead them? You could be the one that could change things, right? And ultimate, right, lead where Westpoint is currently.
Okay, I mean, I think the to answer your question on some of the challenges, the first one definitely would be having to prove to the team that I was going to lead from the front, right? I wasn't going to be someone that just calls the shot and then send them out to meet the clients and face the music. And I did that by going with them to the most painful meetings. So I would actually sit down with the managers. So within the first 3 months, I sat down with the team of managers and I said, look, what is the meetings that you dread the most? Let's go for that together, right? And I think that when I showed up and I sat down with them, either to face the music or to have the conversations that could have been a bit more tumultuous, I think it proved to them that this guy is going to be walking with me, even when it's unpleasant. Right. So that was the first thing that I had to do. Number two was I made it a point within the first 90 days to actually do a check-in with every team member. So this was regardless of role, responsibility, rank, so to speak. I sat down with everyone and I wanted
every single bus driver.
Yes. So every single corporate team, HQ, staff member, bus driver.
All the way to down.
Yes.
Line.
Yeah. It also helped me. So in a way, it was a PR campaign, right? So they can also put a face to the name. But more importantly, also I could then also understand from them as well what exactly they felt they were contributing to the company. And also more importantly, what were their own plans in terms of their career? Right. And of course, again, my favorite point, which is what is their pain point? What are their pain points, if more than one, that I could at least hear about, right? So that was the biggest challenge. And then having to, of course, tackle the old guard and a very conventional way of approaching the business with my fancy new modern ideas. I think that would definitely like come under that first, heading of the most challenging periods of my career. The second one would be 6 months into going back into Westpoint. Our then Prime Minister announced that, there would be this thing called a circuit breaker.
Right? Ouch.
Yeah. And I don't know if you were affected at that point in time, but during the first week of the announcement of the circuit breaker measures, all businesses were not allowed to resume operations or to have their staff members come back to the office. And at that point in time, the business was, like I say, it's very conventional, very traditional. All the staff members were very used to talking to each other, writing on paper and pen. And to suddenly be forced to work from home was completely like remote and strange to them.
Yeah.
And so everybody didn't know how to operate. So they did what most humans would do, which is each of them start going about it in their own manner, right? And that of course led to a lot of chaos. So for me, I knew that right there and then, if I didn't figure that out, the arrangement out quickly, the customers will start to realize that Westpoint is starting to be a bit chaotic and our operation is going to get impacted as well. And all set against the backdrop of this very contagious virus, right? Because also bear in mind that transportation is the moving of people.
Yeah.
Right? You're moving warm bodies around. And so while we're trying to tackle the government's, measures, trying to figure out what exactly were the safety precautions we're supposed to implement on our buses, we were still trying to figure out as well internally how we're going to, communicate on a day-to-day basis. Right? And also remember, Zoom at that point was probably not even in existence yet. It only came out very quickly after, if I recall correctly.
I mean, Zoom was in existence, but there's not many people uses it.
Yeah.
But how do you use Zoom with 50 drivers and all?
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, we figured it out in the end, and I'm not going to go into the details because I think it's a bit too granular. But that was the biggest challenge at that point, right? We had to quickly figure out how to organize ourselves.
Right.
And then quickly make sure that our drivers didn't feel like they were left out, at risk, right? What were the safety measures we could quickly provide and implement on our buses? How could we effectively and speedily communicate with our stakeholders, our clients, our decision makers, our subcontractors?
Right.
Reassure them that, look, someone is looking into this. We're not just going to throw you out there and drive the bus. Because for us, we were within the first 3 days of the circuit breaker measures being implemented, we were classified as, what was that word at the time? I think it was exceptional business. I can't remember. I'm sorry. I can't remember the phrase.
I'm trying to recall as well.
Yeah, there were like some businesses that were allowed to continue operations, but you had to apply to MTI at that point for an exception. So we got granted that license quickly because most of our customers, even till today, they are in the industries where their companies or their production facilities cannot be shut down.
Right.
Yeah, like it runs 24/7. So they knew that the transportation of the staff members
are required,
had to continue. Yeah, if not, something really bad is going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, so the government thankfully allowed us to continue operations or resume operations very quickly. But we still had to observe the safety measures, meaning that we couldn't congregate in the office at that point in time.
Yeah, that was I think 2 meters length.
That was even before that. We're not even allowed to go back. Yeah, we were like,
right.
If you recall, I think it was only after 6 months.
Yeah, that was
that we were
gradually come back. And
yeah,
yes.
Correct. So we were all working from home for a good period of time. And also don't forget there's the shock factor, right? Everybody was just caught
What's
unaware.
happening?
Yeah. So at that point in time, we had to do a lot of these things. And if your Googling skill is good enough, you actually find out that Westpoint's drivers, one of them was actually one of the first patients to catch COVID-19.
Wow.
Yeah, that was back in 2020, if I recall correctly.
But how did it impact Westpoint on this?
So it was okay. So just to draw, I apologize if it's taking too long.
No worries, please.
Going back to that period at point, if you recall, the news on a daily basis would actually list the people who actually caught the virus.
That's right.
They didn't disclose the name. They would say patient number something is something like a nurse
from
or something.
where nurse.
Correct.
Yeah, I remember that.
So the first bus driver to catch it was from Westpoint.
Wow.
Yeah. And I like I said, I don't want to go into too much details, but this driver that caught it, I mean, it was just as with all patients or people who contracted COVID-19 at that point, it was just a case of bad luck.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there was no way you could have chosen.
Yeah.
He was actually, basically because he was a part-time driver in Westpoint, he had another job that was actually involved in the logistics side of things.
Right.
And basically, he was more at risk of being exposed to the virus. Yeah. So at that point in time, the news media, obviously, whenever a patient is identified, So I also had to handle the media at that point in time, right? Because I remember speaking with some of the news media about, what measures we had put in place. So there were a lot of unexpected balls to juggle. Right. With the onset of the pandemic. Yeah. So that would be the second challenge, I think, that I faced very early on in my career, when I took over Westpoint. The third and the last one, in terms of the big challenges, right, is or was when, ironically, COVID, the pandemic actually started to come to an end. Because if you recall, back in 2022, the measures were starting to be more relaxed. And I think one of the last few was when the government allowed tourism to be reinstated.
Right.
Opening up the borders, more flights could come in. And at that point in time, bear in mind that this was a 2-year period where all or most of the foreign drivers in Singapore had already either gone home because they were worried that they'll be stuck in Singapore, or they would have left the industry. So there was already a huge depletion of drivers. A lot of the smaller businesses had gone out of business because they couldn't sustain the impact of the pandemic. So the entire industry was stuck with basically like a skeleton crew of drivers. And when tourism was reinstated, a lot of drivers wanted to go back to be tour bus drivers. Because in the world of bus transportation, tours are the most attractive.
Right.
As you can
much
imagine.
higher pay and all.
Yeah, well, I mean, the pay is about the same, but the rewards are much more. You get tips from foreign tourists. Some of them can sell souvenirs.
Right.
You also get to go to places that are more attractive. Right. I mean, if you think if I drive to Tuas versus, any of the attractions,
it's more fun.
On a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely more fun. And the hours are less demanding because tourists are not going to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to work.
Yeah. I mean, later it's just 12, go back, sit in the hotel and you're done.
Correct. Yeah. And so, I mean, also because tourists, they are by and large in a more positive mood compared to office workers, right? So, the people that you
less
interact with.
gloomy that way.
Yeah, correct. So obviously that's where a lot of the drivers wanted to go to because also there was shortage of tour bus drivers. That was number one. Number two, Ukraine had announced that they were going to be invaded.
Yeah.
Right. And so at that point in time, we didn't know that it would be such a long-standing issue. But the fuel prices started to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And then number three was that because of the first two factors, inflation started to
rise as well. Yeah.
Right. And so we had this perfect storm of factors that was going to hit the industry, or that had hit the industry.
Yeah.
And don't forget also at that point, businesses were starting to reopen. So a lot of companies were asking to reinstate transportation.
That's right.
For their staff members, or asking to increase. Right. So we were stuck with business to do, but not enough drivers. And the subcontractors that were available also know that they are more in demand now. So the price started to go higher.
Yeah.
But the other side of the equation was that customers were not ready to pay higher prices because a lot of them were...
They're still trying to recover from the whole pandemic.
Correct. And even if they had been doing well, they will also use
it's an excuse, right? Yes,
I mean, nobody wants to pay more. Let's be honest about it. So at that point in time, we were stuck with a very limited budget on our client side, but the need to find solutions to quickly meet this demand. If not, we would either end up in the losing end, or we would actually be forced to provide transportation at a very low price, but engaging talent at a very high price, which obviously from a business sense, it makes
doesn't make financial sense. Yeah,
correct. So that was a big challenge for us to actually overcome, and which of course then ultimately led to the campaign that you probably heard about as well.
$5,000 driver,
yeah, correct. Yeah, so that was that was a year in the making, and we took a bit of time to plan it and strategize how we wanted to roll it out.
Yeah. So in case you guys are wondering what we're talking about, right? So Westpoint became in the headline news because they were offering $5,000, right, as a base pay to bus drivers. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Right. And I heard from there on, right, there was many interesting stories, right, where bankers even quit their job to join as well.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to touch on that later on, right? But that's it. Coming back to this, I'm very curious on a couple of stages, right? The first one being, with all these things happen, right? As a person yourself, right? Have you ever come to a point where you felt that the weight of your family expectation is there, right? You felt no shag, just that everything's just on you.
Yes.
Yeah, and how do you cope with that?
Well, I think to answer the first question, right? The short answer is yes. I still feel it up to today. As a second generation business lead, you are basically riding on the shoulders of giants, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really very blessed that my parents built the business from literally one bus to what it was when I took over. And that is something that I don't even know if I could have accomplished, right? So they have been very accomplished in their own measures, in their own context as well.
Right.
And so for me, there's always that pressure of, okay, so what am I going to do, right? Number one, don't screw it up. Because I don't want to be the one, I mean, I hope I'm never going to be. I don't want to be the one where, holding the business lead or the reins of the business and then it fails.
Yeah.
Right? That's for sure. But more importantly, what am I going to do with this business? Am I just going to maintain the cost of the business? Or am I going to see like how much more can I achieve with this business? Right. And in business, right, if you choose to maintain costs, the truth of the matter is you are inevitably going to die out. Yeah. Because the best defense is to attack, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't expand, you are just contracting, whether through by default through external forces like inflation or through the fact that bus drivers will ultimately retire. If you don't actively seek to find succession plans for any of the factors that are critical to your operations, they will ultimately,
spiral downwards. Yeah.
Right. And so it is my job, my responsibility as the business lead to make sure that we prepare ahead of time for as many, if not all, of these factors. Yeah. So the pressure is definitely there.
Yeah. So I'm curious here again, right? What do you think that you hold two businesses?
Yeah.
Right. Which one do you think is tougher to helm?
I would say that Westpoint is definitely the tougher one to helm, mainly for the reasons I just gave you. And also because I feel that it's not a business that I had much interest in growing up. Right. As much as like I told you, I grew up being very familiar and kind of, exposed to it. I never saw it as something that would be part of my career. Right. And so for me, it was always advertising, because I had spent 7 years trying to hone my skills and figuring it out and getting very comfortable in it. Right. And so in a way with Playmakers, I'm writing my own story with my business partner, of course. Right. And when we fall or when we have low moments, we turn to each other and we figure out together.
Yes.
And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, of course, we have a team, but as business leads, we are the ones to solve the problems on our own. And we are only answerable to each other, right? With the family business, as I mentioned, I am in a way, even though my parents don't demand explanations for my every action, there is that thing hanging over your head.
Yes.
Right? Ultimately. And also because in Westpoint, the expectation from onlookers, right? Whether it is extended family, whether it is competitors, or even suppliers, is that, okay, you are second gen, you don't drive a bus, you don't look like a bus driver, you tiakang tangan, what are you going to do?
Yes.
Right? And I even though no one has actually said it to me directly, there is definitely that notion. Yeah.
Right.
And so for me, I have to at least figure this out myself. It's a very lonely journey, right? I mean, you had Samuel, Xiao the lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Ex-lawyer, sorry, who came on and he told you about how he felt about being an entrepreneur. Everything he said is true. It is really lonely. And in an industry where it's very traditional and people tend to, set, fences around their business, not all, but many of them, it's not easy to actually ask for help.
Right.
Yeah. So there is that challenge in there as well.
Yeah. So to our viewers out there, right, I don't think that you inherit a company, it's easy for you, right? Hearing from Lionel, he man himself and telling you how tough it is, just purely on expectations, right?
Yeah.
So with that saying, you say there's a very lonely journey, right? I'm curious, how do you get out of this mindset? Because are there any stages in point in time that you say that actually this isn't for me? It's time for me to give up. I'm done.
Every day.
And how do you get out of it?
I think your question is very smart and it's very correct in the sense that it's a lot to do with mindset.
Mm-hmm.
At the start and the crux of all of it, right, is the fact that it's me that decided to be here, right? And I don't mean here, but as in as a business lead at Westpoint.
Yeah.
While yes, I say my parents guilt trip me, etc., I could have decided to say no. Right. But for my reasons, I decided to say yes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, I need to, number one, be accountable to myself, right? And honest with myself to say that, look, you made that decision. Now you need to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. Don't blame anybody else. Right. And right now, you can choose to either quit or you can choose to at least try. Right. And so that leads to my second point, mentally and in my mindset. Every day when I wake up, when I ask myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so tired, right? I also ask myself, like, do I want to quit or do I want to try? It's really that simple. Because while, of course, there are many ways to rephrase it and to approach it and reword it, the truth of the matter is you only have these two choices, right? You can quit or you can try lah. Of course, you can take breaks, maybe call an off day today, maybe take it a bit slower. Yes, but you're still going to trudge forward. And being able to at least take one step forward is better than quitting to me.
Right.
And I say that only in the context of as long as I have an idea of where I want to go. If the day comes where I feel like either I've achieved everything I can, or I don't have an idea of where to bring this business forward anymore, then I will take the quit option.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, to listen, I wake up every day and ask myself, I don't want to do this anymore,
So there you go, guys. People do say that every day, right? Just how you're going to pivot your mindset around it, right? And work for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I would say lastly also, I'm very blessed. I have an amazing wife who actually provides a system at home that allows me to not only be present at work, but also to come home and be a present dad as well, right? She cooks my meals for me. She makes sure that the kids, their school homework is attended to, their curriculum and ECAs are all kind of like ticked off the boxes.
Right.
And in a way, all I have to do when I come home at night or in the evening is I get to read to them and I put them to bed. And I think that for me, that is a blessing. And I'm very thankful for that because not many dads out there have that privilege.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, that's only possible because my wife makes it so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do want to touch on that later on, right?
Sure.
But before I touch on that, right? So let's give a bit of context here to our viewers out there. Because as an entrepreneur, right, as a business lead in the businesses itself, there are definitely a lot of personal sacrifices that you have to make, right? Can we know what are those?
I don't have much of a social life. I have to be very honest. I am someone that feeds off the energy of people. So prior to having a family, prior to being in Westpoint, I actually could have the time after work, even at Playmakers when we first started. I actually had the time to go out, go to the gym, either with my co-founder or with my friends, have dinner after that, and then come home, sleep, and then wake up next day and start the day again.
Yeah.
And of course, during weekends, I get more free time. But now at this point, with two kids and also another business on that list, the space for social activities has really gone down to almost negligible.
Right.
Right. So that's definitely the sacrifice that I've had to make over the past few years since taking over Westpoint. Number two, I would say is in terms of what I actually choose to do for leisure, that has also been sacrificed quite significantly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I used to like to travel with my wife. I mean, before that, my girlfriend, then, or even with friends. But it has diminished now, right? Yeah. So of course now we travel still with our kids. But as most parents would know, traveling with kids is very
different matter altogether.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not really traveling. You're kind of
Taking
just keeping them alive
yeah.
in a foreign country, Yeah. So I think those two are the biggest sacrifices that I've had to make since joining Westpoint or since taking on Westpoint.
Yeah. So with that said, going back to the pillar of support, right? So you mentioned your wife was a huge pillar of support and all, giving you everything, right? That you could to make all the businesses work, right? I think that's fantastic. I think most guys, or in fact ladies as well, right, will hope to achieve that, right? Because they hope to have a partner to be that supportive, right? And giving them room, right, to grow. Other than a partner, a spouse, right? Anyone else?
Yes, for sure. I think I get to do what I do, even for example, coming in today to do a session with you, because I have a very solid team on Playmaker's side and Westpoint side that are able to carry out their duties and ensure that, I don't have to be there every single moment to keep an eye on things, right? So that definitely comes to mind, first of all. The competency and the commitment that my managers have at Westpoint and also at Playmakers,
right.
Those are things that, we don't take for granted.
Yeah.
Especially in Westpoint, where the industry is seen as very traditional. So attracting talent is a challenge on its own.
Right.
Yeah, so spending time with each of the leadership team is important for me, and I get to do what I do now because of them.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about mentorship?
What about it?
do you actively seek mentorship? How does your parents play in terms of mentorship? I'm sure they are business mentor other than just being parents to you as well.
Well, I would say in terms of mentorship, I mean, I was kidding when I say what, but when in terms of mentorship, right, it's very interesting because, again, going back to what Samuel said, right, it's very lonely. It is something that a lot of people who are either aspiring entrepreneurs, whether, they're thinking of starting a cafe or online business, or thinking of quitting their job now to just do Airbnb, for example, right? The first few months or years may be quite fun, but the repetition of it and the stresses that you have to actually face on a, I would say, daily basis, it actually makes you realize very quickly that you are actually the one making all the decisions, and you are going to be responsible for what comes as a result of that.
Okay.
So when it came to finding mentors, that was the one thing that I actively sought from the first year I took over Westpoint onwards, because going back to the story of me coming back to the company, my parents made a very swift transition out of the business. So I was given a period of about 6 months to basically figure it out. And then they would have
6 months?
Yeah, they would step aside. Yeah. But
wow.
to be honest, I mean, it does sound a bit dramatic, but to be honest, prior to that, of course, there were a lot of discussions and a couple of years I had on the sideline. Right. So between the times when I was just doing, the printing of pamphlets and actually taking over, there were years when I was actually helping them with the marketing side of things, speaking with some of the team members at that point. So I was still involved on the fringe, but I never really got involved until 6 months prior to my mom and my dad saying, okay, we're going to go. Yeah. So I would say that for me, when I look to find mentors at a point in time, I was honestly struggling to find someone within the industry or within my demographic in terms of age and experience that could help to provide some sort of guidance. The one place that I actually found resource and comfort in was actually in this institute under SMU. Yeah, called the Business Family Institute.
Okay.
So BFI for short, which I was surprised to find because I never knew there was a whole institute dedicated to helping family businesses leads run their business. Excuse me. And so for me, when I actually found that there was this institute, I signed up for a course. And I quickly found out that, they actually have
similar profiles, backgrounds.
Yeah. So at BFI, I got to meet a lot of second, third, fourth, fifth generation business leads. Not from the transport industry, but from various industries.
Okay.
So I had one who was actually in the funeral business.
Yeah.
I might not be using the right term, but basically companies that take care of your
the undertakers and all, right?
Correct. Yeah. And he was the fourth generation business lead. His great grandfather was actually like a coolie worker.
Wow.
That buried one of his shipmates from China. And as he was burying the guy at that point, someone gave him $1, which at that point of time was quite a fair
bit. Yeah.
And so he realized that, maybe he can help in this business. So he built the business from there, literally. And so he is now the fifth generation business lead.
Wow. And from there on, that's where you managed to gain some motivation, new ideas, and innovate your businesses.
In a way, we were bonded by common pain points.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you take away the industry specifics, businesses still face a lot of common problems.
Yes.
Staffing, succession, financial planning, etc.
Yeah.
So the BFI actually identified that, if we can help to group these business leads together, especially from the SME side of things, they can actually strengthen that community of business owners, through networking, but also help to exchange ideas and thoughts, whether it's innovation, whether it is, like I said, succession planning, etc. So that actually gave me a lot of comfort because this was not just limited to Singapore businesses. This was regional businesses as well.
Right.
Yeah. So that actually allowed me to feel like, okay, I'm not alone. Right. And if I have some struggles and I share it in the group chat, someone's going to be able to provide me with some of either their shared experience or their solution even. Yeah. So that was where that idea of mentorship actually came as close as I could find in this business currently. To your point on my parents definitely played a huge part in getting me involved in the business. But then I would say also that they also recognized very quickly that in 2019 at that point in time, the business environment was very different from what they were used to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Changes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so they also quickly understood that whatever that needed to be done had to be either very risky or very risk averse. Right. And for me, I told them from the get-go that, look, we cannot take the conservative approach then. Yeah. We have to make some big plays, so to speak. Which probably led to that quick withdrawal because I think they also, we clashed for a while when it came to business decision making. Yeah. And then that's when they left.
I see.
Yeah. But I mean, my parents and I are very good relationship. It's just that we quickly recognize that one person has to lead. It cannot be a shared.
Cannot have too many leaders in the business.
Yeah.
It will become very, very messy.
Correct.
So with that said, I want to touch a little bit on innovation.
Yeah.
Right, because you did mention about, when they leave, there's a way of innovation that you came up with and all. So I understand from Westpoint, there were two key innovations. Maybe there's more, right? But at least in the media, there were two. The first one was you offering $5,000 as a base pay to bus drivers. The second one, right, was your buses are starting to follow the government guidelines and trying to be more eco-friendly, more hybrid, right? So how did that come about?
Wow, that's a very good question. I would say the first one on the hiring campaign, right? Partly, the story, what I told you just now, where we were faced with a shortage of talent. At that point in time, if we take you back about 2 years ago, a lot of the people that I spoke with in the industry, they were telling me that there's no future for bus drivers to be hired locally.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about people and individuals within decision-making sites on even the government as well. So when I consult with them, they were saying that, look, you need to think of how to either find external/foreign sources and still figure out within the parameters of things like quota, or you need to quickly look at autonomous vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to 2022, when we were trying to figure out how to get past this driver shortage problem, we sat down as a leadership team, and then we looked at what are some of the challenges the locals face when trying to apply to be bus drivers.
Yeah, so the thing is that maybe we understand that, you put up such a high pay, right? But it's definitely going to hurt the company P&L because high pay means high operating costs, right? And it's a very interesting, innovative way to actually hire people in because you will definitely get more drivers. I'm sure. I do hope you do get.
Yeah.
Right? But that also meant that the costs will have to be loaded somewhere else, right? Whether or not it's to lower the cost of some other operations or your premium will definitely have to go up a lot more, right? So how do you manage that? Because it's a very tough, innovative way to be doing it.
Yeah, that's the question that honestly, everybody from my competitors to the reporters to even some of the government staff members have actually asked me. I always tell them that the answer is actually surprisingly boring. We planned this for a good 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
And the vision is that this is not a short play. This is a long-term play. And in the short term, I need to prioritize what are the challenges I'm going to face.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, driver or talent shortage is something that if I don't address now, I will face a bigger consequence in 5 years' time, maybe even less.
So it's a way forward planning that you are doing here.
Yeah. So the short answer, and this is something that I've explained many times, but many people don't believe me. We actually decided that when we look at our financials, do we have enough within the yearly revenue, specifically the profit margin, to actually take a hit on that and to actually give it to our drivers? And to be honest, the short answer is we had to figure out how to make it happen. So that is how we actually formulated the quantity of drivers that we wanted to take in, and also the salary package. Because $5,000 as a gross salary, and a $10,000 joining bonus is not a small sum of money.
Yeah.
Right? But what is actually even scarier is that on the other side of this equation is that if I get these 30 drivers, that means I need to get at least 30 new buses.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you think that 5,000 a month is scary, then
what about the bus cost, right?
Yeah. And also, let's not forget that COE continues to be
going another pain.
Yeah, right? So in that sense, there was a lot of planning that had to be actually done financially as well. And this has to come from somewhere. So we do have the privilege of being able to raise some money through loans, from the banks and the financial institutions. But a lot of it and the bulk of it continues to come from our company's P&L, basically.
Right.
Yeah. And many people ask me, why do you want to do that? For me, like I explained to you, if I don't do this now,
I'll get a hit no matter what, either way.
Yeah. And I think that the most important thing actually is not so much about the financials. What we're trying to address here is, like I started out just now, is the fact that local drivers, the perception of the local talent entering the workforce as bus drivers is that there's no future there, right? Many people had given up trying to get younger Singaporeans to actually apply to be bus drivers.
Yeah.
But I feel that if I can understand why better, then at least I can try and see if I can find a solution. Right? And to me, again, this is why I say, if you look at the pain points, what are the pain points? The statistics tell you a story, right? And so we looked at why is it lesser Singaporeans are applying for the jobs. And the answers are very easy to actually come up with. Number one, then the low pay. Number two, it's a very physical job. Number three, it's very risky. Number four, it's not very fun. Right? And so when you look at all these factors, you have the fifth factor that comes up, which is that the alternatives are not that hard to find. Be it drive Grab, do delivery for food, do logistics, all these have more, all these have more attractive benefits to it in terms of the first few factors. Of course, they come with the downsides as well. But when it comes to all these first four factors for being a bus drivers, it explains very quickly why lesser and lesser Singaporeans are applying for it. Right? We even asked our bus drivers, would you want your children to be bus drivers? They said no. I said, why? Because it's so tiring. Why want my son or daughter to do it? Pay is so low, Then and society will not look upon them as people who are, high achieving. Right. So for me, that was when we decided that, look, if we want Singaporeans to continue to be part of this industry, then we need to also help them get that answer that they're trying to find, right?
Yeah.
Which is,
you have to be a future for them. If not, they will not stay.
Correct. Yeah. And so to me, it was very simple. If I can increase their salary, at least I open that door for Singaporeans to consider. Right? And if Singaporeans say, no, this is not the job for me, at least then I know that, okay, salary is not a factor.
It's something else.
Correct. Right? And so for me, I refuse to say that local Singaporeans will, don't want to be bus drivers anymore. And I've said this also in previous interviews. This is not something that will continue to be an opportunity if no one addresses it. Right? You look at the construction industry, for example, right?
Yeah.
So it's not hard to look into the crystal ball and see what could happen in this respect. And so for us, that was the starting point of the strategizing of how we wanted to launch our hiring campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with that said, that was a very innovative way of doing things, right? We do need to innovate. My question here is that there are many young entrepreneurs out there, right? What's one mistake that you see they're most likely making it, right? And how should they avoid it?
Don't do what I did.
That's why your story is here for everybody to learn, right?
Yeah. Well, when I said don't do what I did, I guess we're jumping companies here, but like I said just now with Playmakers, right? I think a lot of times, I would say aspiring entrepreneurs,
right,
look at an idea they have in their mind or something that they think is a viable business concept, and they focus and fixate on it as if it is the silver bullet, right? Without considering the fact that once you put it on the market, there are many external factors that are always going to determine whether businesses sink or succeed, right? So when I say things like this, what I mean is, like, for example, your conventional factors, your costs, your operational costs, right? Regardless of how innovative your business is, you still need to figure out what are your operational costs. You need to plan ahead of time. Don't think that you're going to just jump in and figure it out along the way. Number two, if you can find a good support system, right? Like I shared, I'm very blessed, again, with my wife, with a business partner that shared, I guess, the same values as I did. But I also take that not everybody has that privilege as well. Right? If you can find a good support system, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a business advisor, or even a business partner, take it. Always try and form a community. It would really help you to go forward in the long run.
Yeah.
You know that saying about if you want to do it alone, you want to do it fast, do it alone. Yeah, but if you want to do it for a long time, you find people to
review.
Yeah.
So with that said, I'm very curious now because you have walked a fair bit of journey. If I were to turn back time, right, and I allow you to change something in your life, what would that be?
You mean in business or
yes,
you mean
in business?
Okay.
I mean, it can be life too if that happens to you.
Yeah. It's a very interesting question. If I were to change something in my corporate journey, I think that I would have paced myself a lot more in my advertising side of my corporate journey. When I first started, I really wanted to prove myself to my parents, to my colleagues, to the people that took a chance on me. And I pushed myself to the point where I actually hit a burnout stage, and I spent a good 2 years trying to recuperate, right? While still working and figuring out what is this that I'm going through, right? I mean, I think mental wellness is something that is on the other side of the coin when it comes to grit, right? You can have grit, but you still need to learn to take care of yourself because both need to coexist, right? As with everything in life, balance needs to be struck, right? So to me, if I could change something, I would say that I would have been more mindful of how I actually pushed myself or how hard I actually went at trying to reach the goals that I set for myself throughout my career.
Yeah. So I think because of your background, right, as an athlete, right, as a national swimmer, this is one question that I probably only could ask to you, which is if there's one lesson that you could impart the young athletes, right, who are interested in transiting into businesses, what would that be?
I would say that if you're talking about like businesses as in running your own business, being an athlete and going into running your own business is like chalk and cheese. It's completely different worlds. If you ask me, learning from the old timer, I would tell like a current athlete looking to do that, to actually go and do like go and work for somebody, right? Go and get some experience, and preferably work for somebody that is willing to share with you his or her struggles as a business leader or even a manager, and at the same time gain some skills, not just in terms of like what you do, but also life skills, right? In terms of how to overcome challenges, socialize in that respect, because you also are able to learn from others as well.
Right.
Those will form the foundations in honing your business acumen before you actually jump into your business itself, into finding your own business itself.
Yeah. Now, so to the transport bus industry specific, right? I just want to hear from you. What do you hope, right? Whether or not there's any good changes in this industry itself. What do you hope that you will change in this industry rather?
I think that the transportation industry has a lot of potential, right, in doing good for society. I feel that with Singapore and the pace at which it's developing, or it has developed over, the past 6 decades. Sorry. I would say that we sometimes have sacrificed, or at times have sacrificed some of the members of our society that we should pay more attention to, be it your seniors or your children of our society. I think the pace at which we are actually rushing to develop things and achieving things causes us to not pay attention to them. Transportation is one of the few industries that still are able to accommodate the needs and attend to the requirements of these communities, right? Be it bringing them together, or making their life a bit more convenient, or providing them with avenues to socialize, and also find ways to enrich their lives.
Right.
I think that the transport industry has almost a duty to do something about it.
Yeah. So in this show, right, in my podcast, in this show, right, we actually do ask every single guest that comes here, right, to actually give one word, right, to all inspiring young entrepreneurs out there. So what would that word be for you, Lionel, right, and why?
my word is always narrative.
Narrative.
Yeah. The story that we tell ourselves between our ears, at every experience that we gain, or every interaction that we go through, is key to influencing the steps that we take immediately after,
Right.
and in the years that follow as well. Right. I think every interaction, some of which I've shared over the last few minutes with you, you have a choice as to how you want to interpret it, and the story you tell yourself about that interaction. I've read somewhere that as humans, what separates us from animals is the ability to not just think, but to actually form our construct around what we experience. Right? So that's what sets us apart. And that's what we term as intelligence.
Okay.
But that can also be a shortcoming for us if we take that ability to connect the dots and look at it in ways that are detrimental to us. Right? So like I said, you can look at it as a positive or as a negative, but if you don't choose to look at it as a way forward, or something that you can learn from, then it's basically useless.
Right. I hear you on that.
Yeah. So the narrative that you tell yourself is actually very critical.
Yeah.
And it all starts from there.
Yeah, I love this word, man. Ladies and gentlemen, narrative. Powerful word. So before I end this whole podcast, right, probably want to look at you facing this camera over here, right, and probably tell our young audience or young entrepreneurs out there, right, any other last piece of advice they can carry with them with their journey, right, or anything that you would like to say to them at all.
Well, I would say, number one, don't listen to your parents if they ask you to do the family business. No, I'm just kidding. I would say that always be thankful for the opportunities that you get. Not in the sense of an old timer nagging at you to be appreciative, but if you learn to be more mindful and more appreciative of every single opportunity that you are given, it really helps with how you actually decide to carry on, be it through your career, through your life experiences, or even in a later stage in life, right? From forming your own family to tackling the issues of aging as you get older, and also things like family interactions and challenges as well. So if you can start to be more mindful of how much positivity you actually express and give to others, it will go a very long way.
And that brings us to the end of an inspiring chat with Lionel. As you can see, from the pool to the boardroom, Lionel's journey shows us that challenges are just merely stepping stones to success. His story of perseverance, adaptability, and continuous growth is a reminder to all of us that no matter where you start, it's all about where you are heading to. Once again, to our listeners out there, I hope Lionel's journey has inspired you to push through your own challenges and chase your ambitions. Lionel, thank you once again for sharing us your incredible insights. And we do hope to look forward to you seeing your next big move. To the viewers out there, keep dreaming big, stay resilient, and do join us for next time for more inspiring stories. Until then, keep swimming forward. And I hope this podcast has ignited your mission. So do join us for more no bullshit stories from successful individuals on Mission Ignite. Hi guys, thank you for listening. If you like what you have just heard, follow us for more content like this.